lines have a lot of power. Everything that you put on a piece of paper makes evident, I believe, our respective starting points, the assumptions that we bring with us to the table, our disciplinary frameworks, and our particular biases. And I think that's why we're asking you to create drawings, to make marks, is to allow those to be out on the table and to have a hard discussion about those things. We're going to be going to another levee condition. In this case, there's going to be a spillway where water and sediment is allowed to flow through periodically to address flooding conditions along the Mississippi. And when we get to spillway, we're going to break into two groups. And so we're using this same methodology of transects for biological sampling and also for this kind of spatial exploration.
So when you are sampling, if you're looking for insects, and the way you capture is that you sweep and snap, okay? And when you do that, that is going to keep your specimen here. What's the relationship between the different organisms that we have in one transect? Is there going to be a pattern that you see? And so you find these plants and you find this type of algae. To see the relationship between organisms and relationships to the river as well.
We'll go back to the drawing of sections, and of course the tradition of sections is a functional rational method. But think about this section as a fairly open, intuitive, maybe subjective graphic notation of what you care about.
You know, the exciting part about this seminar is the multidisciplinary group that we have, right? They can teach me a lot about the microbes, the algae, terrestrial plants, and aquatic insects. You can look at all the different systems and look at the interactions.
I think there's so many different ways of knowing an environment, knowing a place, knowing something as complex as a river system. And I think it's so vital because we're talking about a river changing course, entire economic, social, and political systems.
With interdisciplinary work, there is a moment of coming to terms, where you cannot really assume that anybody would share or understand that language. And so this process of meeting, coming together and coming to terms in translation and interpretation in itself is very productive and inspiring.
Part of my work is focused on how do we help to center people in the built environment and create a balanced conversation. How do we actually prepare a space for the work with multiple disciplines at the table where everyone understands?
I may be able to express orally or communicate what it is that I'm concerned about with my data collection. You're asking me to map.
We might look at the environment and look at what people see and draw it, but what are you hearing? And how do you illustrate something you hear? Or what do you feel? Like this sense of fear that many feel as a result of the flood risk. How do you capture that?
This section of the river looks like the section of the river where I live pretty much. I've never been to the spillway before, but of course, always conscious of conversations about opening the spillway and the impact that it will have on our life, flooding, life with the river. But again, it gets back to the political constraints of where people are allowed to live. And I'm fortunate because on the one hand, I've had way too much college education, and on the other hand, I still have connections to people, everyday people living their lives. Everyone doesn't have to know all the science and math to understand how it will impact their community. So for example, I would be impacted because I would be displaced for 20 years. The question I pose is, what is the intentionality around building relationships with people and places.